So we're going to continue today in our Proverbial Life series, and now we're going to be taking Proverbial Life home. And what I mean by that is the next 2 weeks we're going to be talking about a proverbial marriage. What does it look like to be a husband and wife, to have a marriage in line with what God has called us to have, and how the book of Proverbs and wisdom describes it. And then next week we're going to talk about proverbial kids, what it looks like to be a God-honoring child. And then as a parent, how do we do it well? What did Solomon have to say? What does the book of Proverbs has to say? When it comes to our homes and when it comes to our marriage, though, I think we all have an ideal in mind. We have this picture in our mind of what marriage should be, or how my marriage should be, or how my husband or wife should relate to me. And many times it's kind of drawn from a back image that you may have seen as a kid, or on Nick at Night or something, of a black and white TV show from years gone by, of a sitcom or a family comedy. And in it, it's the perfect mom and dad and the perfect home solution. And we kind of put our dreams around something like that. So for me, I just kind of picture walking in the door at the end of the day, and Gina's in the kitchen, of course, in a dress with her hair done, makeup on, and heels on, and she's making a 4-course meal. And I walk in the door, and I look, and I say, "Hello, beautiful woman." And she turns and looks at me and says, "Hello, sexy pastor man." This is my dream. And she goes, "How was your day?" And I'm like, "It was perfect, like every day." And I say, "How was your day?" And she goes, It was okay, but," and my sensitive husband side says, "But what? If something's wrong, I want to fix it." And she goes, "Well, the garbage is full." And I say, "Don't say another word. If it bothers you, it bothers me. I will get the garbage now." And she goes, "But you've had such a long day. Why don't you go sit down, and I'll make you a snack and bring you a drink." And I'll say, "How can I rest when this garbage is bothering you? I will get this right now." And as I'm saying it, down the stairs run my children, and they say, "Mom, Dad, we were upstairs praying for a way to bless you. Let us get the garbage." How many of you that described your home? Liar. We have this ideal in mind, and we kind of picture it, and then there's reality. You come in at the end of the day, and it's been a long day. And Gina may have gotten home before me on a certain day, and she's trying to put something together, and everybody's hungry, and she goes, "How was your day?" And I'm like, "It was a day." And I say, "How was yours?" And she says about the same, and I say, "What are you cooking? What are you doing?" She's like, "Well, I'm trying to cook, but the garbage is overflowing, and it stinks." And I say, "Oh, I thought that was dinner." She's not here this service. So we bicker a little bit about, can I just rest before you start putting me to work? And then we think, oh, good, here comes the kids. They'll help. Good talking to you, kids. We've got this ideal in mind, and then it feels like there's reality. And we're going to be looking at what's the Bible have to say. What does Proverbs have to say about a godly home and a godly marriage? And I want you to understand, this message is for people who are married or about to get married but want to do it God's way. Husbands and wives who say, "I'm in it for the long haul. I don't have one foot out the door. I don't have an escape plan. I am married. I am committed. I am in it, period." Because that's the way God has designed it. When you look at marriage, there are 3 big fights that have been the big fights forever. The first one, money. We talked about money already from a proverbial perspective. And if you missed that week, I would highly encourage you to go online and watch the message, especially if money is a tension point, an arguing point in your home. The second tense point, the second place of argument happens with extended family. We talked about extended family in 3 different weeks, actually. We talked about it from the proverbial woman, the proverbial man, and then also relationships. What does it look like? How do we order things? We talked about it in those 3 weeks. The third topic that always brings tension to a home, and the most common fought on topic, is sex. We have not talked about it, but we will today. And some of you look tense. The biggest reason that these 3 happen is usually a lack of communication. Problems that arise because we don't talk it through. We come at it from the way we see it. We want it the way we want it. We want the home the way we want it. But at the core of doing it God's way, at the core of putting a family together God's way and a marriage God's way, has to come a foundation based on him. We're going to start with our key verse that we've been reading for the last 7 weeks in a row. I'd like you to read it with me, starting with the address. Can we read it together? Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And he will make your paths straight. Now this topic, this verse is true on every topic we've talked about. Being a godly man or woman, or handling finances correctly, or being a person of wisdom, or our relationships. This passage is true, and it is especially true when it comes to our marriages. We must order our marriage the way God has called us to. And that's a struggle because, once again, we show up in our marriages. Our very human side, the part of us that probably lets the wall down. Tim Keller is a pastor and an author. He's in New York City, and he made a bold and very blunt statement. He said it takes both members of a marriage to say that my selfishness is the primary problem in this marriage for the marriage to work. Both sides of the marriage need to be able to say, I'm the selfish one. I have issues with this. Because no matter what the problem is, the minute finger pointing starts, it's going to go downhill. Now, as we look at what Solomon wrote in regard to marriage, to husbands and wives, I want us to remember something. This was a trigger topic for Solomon. He did not do well on this topic. So when he writes his son saying, hey, here's how to do it, here's some wisdom for the home, he writes probably from some positive, but he also writes from some things saying, listen, learn from my mistakes, learn from my lumps. Do it better than I did. And when we read from what Solomon wrote, there's really two key topics that come into play. There's two ways to view the home. Here's the first one. The first one is a house divided. A house divided. And this is not only a miserable place to live, it's a miserable existence. When the place that should be the safest place that you have, full of the people that you love the most, when it becomes the place that you want to be the least, it's a miserable existence. You're driving home from work, from a store, from being with friends. You pull into your driveway and your stomach drops, and you think to yourself, I'd rather be anywhere else but here. I'd rather see anyone else than the person on the other side of that door. Or you're in the house and you hear the car pull up, and you think to yourself, here we go again. It's a miserable existence to have a house divided. And it's not purely created by our circumstances and the problems around us, but how we deal with them, how we respond. Solomon gives us many passages on this. And what I'd like to do this morning is we're going to look at 11 different individual proverbs. And I think you're going to see as we read through these Proverbs, some are to men, some are about women, some of them I think could cross back and forth, but I think you're going to pick up a tone of what Solomon is writing about when we talk about a house divided. The first one, Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 13. It says, and if you want, write these down. You can look them up later as well. They're going to be on the screens, these 11. The first one says, if a man pays back evil for good, evil will never leave his house. Guys, I want to remind you that what you do outside of your home directly affects what goes on inside of your home. Who you are on your job and in your community either is a blessing or leaves a stain on your name for your children and your home. Ladies, the same is true with you. If you pay back evil for good, if you say, well, they deserve it, are we doing it the way Christ said to do it? A house divided will feel the sting of preferring evil over good and paybacks. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 22, the next one. It says, like a gold ring and a pig's snout, so is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. Two words that I think our culture has lost. One is discretion, the other is class. Ladies, carry yourself well. Act, speak with discretion, with class. Men, we can follow that wisdom as well. Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 4. It says, a wife of noble character is her husband's crown, but a disgraceful wife is like decay in his bones. We've all probably either seen someone or know someone who's dealing with a spouse that's like this, or maybe some of us have had to live through it. Proverbs 27 and verse 8. It says, like a bird that strays from its nest is a man who strays from his home. Like a bird who takes off, abandons his family, abandons the young birds, abandons everything that's supposed to be its stability, its roots, takes off and abandons. Says that's the same way a man is who leaves his home. And one word comes to mind when I think of this picture, and that is homeless. No roots, no structure, no safety. Homeless. Proverbs 27 and 8. Be a strength, be a stability for your home, men. Proverbs 15 and verse 27. It says, a greedy man brings trouble to his family, but he who hates bribes will live. If our home is established on our greed and what we want, then our coming together looks like two boxers coming out of their corner. The only time we get in the same space is to fight. And then when the fight is over, we go back to our own corner. I mentioned this in the Father's Day week. My home is not Jack and Gina. It is Guerra Incorporated. The decisions we make together for our home, and we make together for our family. We can't come together only to fight. It's not about greed. It's not about what we can get out of it. Proverbs 26, verse 21. It says, as charcoal embers and as wood is to fire, so is a quarrelsome man for kindling strife. Husbands, I want to encourage you, don't be the guy who, when he pulls into his driveway, his kids all of a sudden feel like they have to walk on eggshells because dad may explode at any minute. Don't be the guy that when you pull up, everyone runs and hides. Because a quarrelsome person brings strife. It's right on the end of explosion all the time. And what happens is, instead of being a house united and a home that's built around unity and love and the same vision, it forces us in opposite directions. It becomes a house divided. Be a peacemaker in your home. Proverbs 17 and 1. Better a dry crust with peace and quiet than a house full of feasting with strife. And all I can say about that is amen. Proverbs 19 and verse 13. It says, a foolish son is his father's ruin, and a quarrelsome wife is like a constant dripping. What kind of home do you see Solomon living in here? And you may say, well, I'm not that into the Bible. You know exactly what he's saying when he talks about this. You don't need a degree in Greek and Hebrew to figure out what this means. It's a house that's divided. There's no peace in it. Proverbs 21 and verse 9. It says, better to live on a corner of the roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife. Solomon must have been facing this a lot, because guess what he says in chapter 25 and verse 24? He says, better to live on a corner of a roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife. Proverbs 21 and 19. Better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and ill-tempered wife. Are you picking up a theme? It's a house divided. You'd rather be anywhere but your own home. You'd rather be in unison and in unity with anyone than your husband or your wife. This is the poor example that's set. But thankfully, there's a second example of a house, and that's a house that's united. A house that's united. Unity in a household and in a marriage is not easy. It takes work. How many of you have been married 15 years or more? Can I see a show of hands? 15 years or more. All right. Those of you who've been married 15 years or more. How many of you is a piece of cake to get the 15 years? Can I see a show of hands? Yeah, you lie. 15 years. Here's what I can promise you. There have been some struggles along the way. There have been some fights along the way. There have been some moments where it felt like you were both coming out of your corners to deal with each other. But you didn't quit. You didn't run away. You didn't turn them into the enemy. And you made it. It's a house united. Proverbs 24, verse 3 and 4. It says, by wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it's established. Through knowledge, its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasure. A house united takes wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, for godly direction, for his vision, and in regard to each other. All through Proverbs chapter 4, we read over and over, get wisdom, get understanding, get knowledge, and all you're getting, get wisdom. The same is true in our marriage. We are constantly learning. We're constantly making deposits into each other. It's like a bank account. And when you begin withdrawing more than you've invested into your account, you're in trouble. The same is true in our marriage. This doesn't happen by accident. A house built, as this passage talks about, building takes work. It doesn't happen accidentally. By understanding, it is established. Establishing takes time. Have you ever gone into a restaurant or a business and it says established in, and it'll give a year? They want you to know, we've been here a while. We're a part of this community. We're not going anywhere. We're established. Establishment in your marriage and in your home takes time. And then thirdly, it says that the room is filled with treasure. Filling something takes investment. It's putting in without taking anything out. It's blessing them without getting anything back. Once again, it's the same as our bank account. More has to go in than what you take out. That's how we have a house or a home that becomes unified. We should be working on building, establishing, and investing in our marriage, like I said, like a bank account. Invest more than you withdraw. Invest more in your marriage than into any hobby you have. Invest more into your marriage than into the Packers preseason roster. That hurt. Make the investment into your marriage because it's for the long haul. It's for life. The investment happens through intimacy of words, intimacy of action, time spent together, and intimacy physically. Proverbs chapter 5, the first verse we're going to read together from your Bibles. We're going to start Proverbs chapter 5, beginning at verse 15. It says, drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares? Let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. Notice here it does not say the youth of your wife. The wife of your youth, where you've made the investment, where you've established yourself and who you are. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. Verse 19, a loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Why, my son, be intoxicated with another man's wife? Why embrace the bosom of a wayward woman? God has established a place for physical intimacy. He's established a place for sex, and it's in marriage with a husband and a wife. It's not to be found in anyone else. It's not to be found in anyone else's home. It's not to be found on any screen. It's not to be found on the job or in any neighbor. It's a relationship. It's an investment with your spouse, with your husband, with your wife. And some of you are reading this and you're going, his fountain blessed, breast satisfying, intoxicated by love. What's Solomon talking about? You know exactly what he's talking about. I would encourage you, Song of Solomon, if you have any more questions. He's very illicit, and it's the same author. He's very illicit on what this means, on what a sexual relationship looks like. And I'll tell you the same thing my college professor told us when we were studying this. If you have any more questions, come see me afterwards or call your parents. This intimacy is to be found at home. Someone paraphrased this verse and said, lovely as an angel, beautiful as a rose. Don't ever quit taking delight in her body. Never take her love for granted. Husbands and wives, this is an intimacy that's between just the two of you. Now I want to give some final words of wisdom in regard to husbands and wives. And this goes back to what my dad told me, and I've held on to this. And it was right before I got married. And Dad and I were talking, and he was like, look, Here's what you need to know. And he gave me this bit of wisdom, and I remember thinking then, really? That's all you got? Thanks. Good stuff. But after almost 27 years of marriage now, this statement probably means more to me, far more now than it did then. My dad told Gina and I, and he was like, look, love each other. Love each other. That's it. That's the big words of wisdom. Love each other. But here's what I'll tell you. When there's an argument about the finances, the last thing running through my mind is, oh yeah, I'm supposed to love her now. When there's a problem in the home and we want two different things or we're seeing it two different ways, very seldom do I go, stop, don't forget to love her. When there's something going on with the kids and there's a dispute and we may see two different sides, very seldom do I stop and go, ooh, love moment. Love each other. Put it into practice no matter what the circumstance. Do we get it right all the time? Absolutely not. But it's a practice. It's a foundational piece. What does this even look like? 1 Corinthians chapter 13, page 813 in the Bibles in the seat backs. This chapter will start by saying what love is. This is how we love each other. 1 Corinthians 13, beginning with verse 4. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Love is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrong. Love each other. Put these into practice. Love each other. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. Love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. So if love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres, if it's always doing this, how often is it doing this? Always. Some of you just missed that. Let's try that again. If we're always supposed to love, always supposed to trust, always supposed to protect, always supposed to hope, always supposed to persevere, how often are we supposed to do this? Always. There you go. Always. Love each other. Husbands, wives, love each other. Because verse 8, the next verse says, love never fails. In the middle of the storm, have a house united. Not because everything is easy, but because you will love each other. I'm going to give you 2 action steps. The first one is this. I would challenge you in your marriage as a couple, get into a small group. And some of you are going, oh, great, small group. Here we go again. No, listen, get into a small group for several reasons. Number one, there's accountability in relationships. And when you've got someone sitting in a circle with you who can look you in the eye and they know where a struggle has been, or they know what's going on there in your marriage, and they can go, no, seriously, how are things going? There's something great about accountability. I love what goes on here. I love the large group gatherings. I think there's something to this community, and we've got a pretty great community of people here. I love our kids having a large community. I love 20-something baptisms last weekend, people coming to Christ at every single service. I love that after the 11 o'clock service, there's either 6 or 8 people in their street clothes came up and said, I need to be baptized. I love that. I love what God is doing through the greater community. It needs to be more than just the us 4 and no more. It needs to be more than the 10 who can fit in my den. I like the bigger community, but there also needs to be the point where we get in the circle instead of in the rows, and we look each other in the face, and we hold each other accountable. And some of you are thinking, my marriage is fine. Why would I need that? Because you keep doing maintenance on the car before the engine light comes on. How many of you know when the engine light comes on, you're probably already too late? The maintenance is available. If you go on Spring Lake Church's website, you'll notice in the bottom corner where it says groups. Click on groups, and on the top, if you're not in a small group, there's actually a link for our small groups that are for couples. If you're married and you're looking for a group with a kind of a marriage accountability, click on the link, see what's around you, especially as we get toward fall. There will be more of that. So that's the first challenge is take the proactive step. But some of you who are in here today, the dashboard light is already on. Some of you are here today in this service. alone because of the fight you had last night. Some of you, your marriage, you've got one foot out the door. You've talked to the lawyer. Your friends are telling you to take a drastic step. Some of you, the words that have been said by your spouse that can never be taken back have left deep wounds. But here's what I want to tell you. Last week we saw the testimony of how Jesus can save a life. And I'm going to tell you right now too, Jesus can save a marriage. Don't put anything outside of his reach. If the dashboard light is already on, there is help. Walk with people who will walk with you through the challenge. You may be beyond the point of just looking at each other and saying, oh, do-over, I love you. They may smack you. But there are people we have through our biblical counseling ministry who will walk with you through these challenges. Many of them have been through the challenge themselves. Once again, on the website, it says ministries, and then click on counseling. Don't go through it alone, and don't live the miserable existence of a house divided. Bring it under God's banner. Bring it under what he meant marriage to be. Do it his way. It takes both people in a marriage saying, my selfishness is the primary problem for a marriage to be successful. There may be one person who's instigating more. But if the dashboard light is on, get help before the engine completely blows. We went into it, you went into it, I went into it saying, this is for life, for better or for worse, for richer and poor, in sickness or in health, forsaking all others, saving ourselves only for them, as long as we both shall live.